Lanka, what a way to start the early AM than with me. Did you see how quiet it got? Welcome to Good Morning Sri Lanka. I'm your host, Jason. Today we have a great show lined up for you. Makeup coming up on the show. Yeah, blush, eyelash stuff. I really don't know much about makeup. But we kick off the show today with things you need to know about your child. Daycare. Yay or nay? Is it good? How could it affect your child? And once again, I'd like to introduce, coming back on the show, is Dr. Maya Kokaram.
Good morning.
Who is a child care expert for moms in Colombo.
That's right,
Welcome
Jason.
Back, yeah.
Thank you.
It's a morning. Are you a morning person?
I have to be with 3 kids. I am not a morning person.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right. So today's topic we're going to talk about is, does daycare really care? And just to point out before we start is that MTV Sports does not endorse these views. It's purely for your entertainment. No, it's not for entertainment. But no, this is interesting because daycare is something that we have all grown up in. Like most of us kids, like our parents are really busy, put us in daycare. That's how it works. But you say daycare is not a good thing for your child.
That's right.
Why?
Right. Well, what I'm specifically talking about is daycare for babies under the age of 1.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and could I give you a little bit of history on
yes.
why this is of particular interest to me? I qualified as a medical doctor from the UK. I worked there as a GP. And then my first son was born.
Right.
And
Josh,
that's right, who is now 14.
Right.
And the plan was, like all our colleagues were doing, was to put him in a daycare center at age 9 months.
Right.
And we shopped around, found a fabulous one. I mean, this is in the UK. Amazing. The child to baby ratio, the parent or teacher to baby ratio was 3 to 1.
Right.
But then somehow I just didn't feel comfortable, so I thought, you know what, I want to do some research on this.
Yeah.
So I researched extensively. And what I found really upset me. I shared it with my husband, especially some writing by a parenting guru called Stephen Biddulph.
Right.
And basically what he said was, daycare for babies under the age of 3 years old is not a good idea, damages their brain chemistry, causes instability emotionally, and if possible, avoid it.
Right.
So that was a monumentous time for us because we had to make a decision.
Sure.
So we decided, I will take a career break, be a stay-at-home mom, and we didn't put Josh into daycare.
Right. So you raised him up pretty much.
I basically was on a career break. Now, I didn't have an option of my mom looking after him because my mom was in Sri Lanka at the time, and my mother-in-law was busy, she was working, so there was no other option, really. But since that time, I have been very interested in this. So the research that comes out, basically, not just from Stephen Biddulph, but maybe you've heard sorry. Can I say it back? Penelope Leach and Dr. Sears. They're sort of the parenting gurus, and they have done extensive research. And what they have found is that babies need one-to-one connection.
Right, and this all of them have come into this one conclusion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And for babies to grow, to interact, they need to be looked after by somebody who loves them, who looks after them, who just focuses just on them.
Okay.
So James Oliver, who's another parenting expert, puts it very succinctly, and he says, Mom is better than Dad, is better than Gran, is better than a maid, is better than daycare.
Okay.
So actually speaking, daycare should be your last option.
Last resort. No option here.
Jason, don't get me wrong, I am not against working mums.
Right, okay.
I know that, there are some women who just cannot afford not to go to work, right? But a lot of the time in Sri Lanka, moms and dads don't realize that there can be other options and better options.
What are the alternatives for this?
Right, so if it's not mom, it's dad. If it's not dad, it could be grandma or grandpa, it could be an aunt, somebody who is not paid to look after the child, but who is there because they love the child.
Who really loves that person. Okay.
Now, the reason that I wrote this article, which caused a lot of uproar amongst is that we were getting a lot of requests in mums in Colombo about daycare centers for babies who were 3 months old, 4 months, 5, 6 months old. Now the reason that happens is in Sri Lanka, maternity leave ends at 4 months. There's an option to go until 6 months. But lots of parents don't realize that it can be harmful. And there's another thing. A recent research done last year in Sri Lanka, right, done by a medical officer of health, looked at 196 daycare centers in Colombo. It's a random study. Out of that, they randomly selected 96. And they looked at different criteria. And 96% of those daycare centers were, well, they thought went under the category mediocre. So that is actually appalling. When they looked at the same criteria in the UK and the US, 80% were fantastic. So you see, in Sri Lanka, unfortunately, the daycare center setup isn't great. So it's even more detrimental for babies. The other thing is that in the UK and developed countries, for babies under the age of 1, the ratio for teacher to baby is 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. Can you guess what it is in Sri Lanka? What the acceptable ratio is?
If I do guess, I might just be going out of the arena here. So
for this study, the acceptable sort of ratio was 1 to 20.
1 to 20. Wow.
Now, do you have any children?
Well, I could say in the very close future.
Okay, right. Have you ever looked after a baby? I mean, looking after one baby is enormously difficult. Can you imagine, forget 20, looking after 5, 6 months old? Or 10. So if you go to the daycare centers, and I've visited a lot, because I taught at ICBT as a child health specialist, and part of it was visiting daycare centers. And really, it's a production line. You get all the babies lined up and fed, diapers changed. It's not a nurturing, caring environment that a baby needs.
You might as well have a machine kind of do those things for your child.
Yes, actually yes. And you know, parents think, oh well, it's stimulating, right? But the stimulation is that there are toys sometimes, not even that, but very often it's not very hygienic. But what damages babies also is the constant overstimulation of noise, of other babies crying, of teachers hurrying about, not the calm, caring, nurturing environment of one-to-one.
But here's the thing: if a daycare was to have, like you said, the ratio for
1 to 3.
1 to 3 is the ratio. If for some miraculous reason there was one-on-one with each baby, and if that person did show a lot of love to this child, would that help?
Absolutely, it's better, right? But then that would be more like a nanny at home. So it's your own home environment. And you know, to be honest, if you're paid to look after a child, I mean, you might, obviously love that child. You can do, but it will not be the same as if it's you yourself loving a child. And this is the other thing that, I found being a mom, a first-time mom, incredibly hard. It was difficult to deal with the crying, not knowing what to do very much, but it was frustrating. But because it was my child, I coped. And I thought, what if it wasn't my child? It would be so much easier just to chuck them out. And there are so much of evidence that show that there is abuse that goes on in daycares.
How have the Sri Lankan mothers reacted to this article that came out as well?
Well, a lot of positives, as in, thank you for this information. I was thinking of putting my baby in daycare, but maybe now I will look at other options.
Pause for a second. This is something, before this came on the show, I was surprised with. I was like, whoa, really? Daycare is not really, it could affect your child in not a very good way. And that was interesting to me. So this is, I'm guessing, new for a lot of Sri Lankan mothers as well to hear about this, because this is how they have heard children were raised sometimes, like when you're a working mom or a working dad and you're super busy, you just put your child in daycare.
Yes.
So,
but also it's interesting that it's the middle class and the upper class that opt for daycare, because of course daycare is expensive, right? So amongst the poorer population of Colombo and Sri Lanka, if a mom has to go to work, then grandma or aunt will look after, right? And here's another interesting thing. They did a study of women in prison, who were not sort of, some of them are mentally subnormal, but they had their babies with them. They were born in prison. And the outcomes of those babies were better than a same sort of cohort study group of other babies who were left in completely in a daycare situation.
Wow. Okay.
So that's it. And the other point is, it's also how long you are in daycare for. If you put a baby in daycare for 2 hours a day, fair enough. Part-time work is almost unheard of in Sri Lanka, right? That means mom needs to go to work from 8 to 5, okay? If she's a new mom, she can cut that time off. So most of these babies are in daycare for 8 hours. I mean, I personally know of a principal who told me they would bring the baby asleep still from the night. The nappy, the diaper is still soaking with urine. Hand the baby over, and the parents go to work. So then the daycare undress him, feed him breakfast, lunch, dinner, put him in his pajamas. Parents come and collect him to take him home.
Oh wow! So this really is proving your point here.
It's really sad. So my point is, I understand if you have to go to work, but when your baby is so young, so little, please think of some other option.
Just a reminder for the people that are just tuning in. This is, you said again, is only would apply to children under the year 1 year.
Age 1. Under age 3 as well. It's better if they were not in daycare, but it doesn't damage them as much.
How would this affect a child in the future, like when they're grown up?
So what they find is that babies in daycare, what they've done is measured their cortisol level. That is our stress hormone. So if you and I are stressed, that level increases in us, and they measured this in babies and found babies in daycare are very stressed. They have a very high level of cortisol. That will also affect the wiring of their brain in terms of emotional stability, being able to have relationships later on, in terms of actually achieving their potential in terms of academia. So it actually affects everything about them. So the ideal situation, I mean, it's not rocket science, is it, Jason?
Of course not.
I mean, a baby is meant to be looked after by a caregiver. Most of the time mom. Fine if it's dad, fine if it's grandma.
Well, it's dad for me.
It's dad for you, okay, Well,
maybe
great, fabulous, you know, and that really doesn't matter. We have quite a few dads who say that, look, mom goes to work, I look after the baby. Is that okay? Absolutely fine. You know, no difference at all. But if you have 10 little babies all together, looked after by 1 or 2 people, it's not a good idea.
Right.